What is the scariest story you know? I look forward to your responses to this question. Write what you think, enjoy watching. Story 1. Guy in my town kept the decaying bodies of his mom and aunt in an unpowered chest freezer in a spare room. He was getting their social security checks for years until the irregularities started showing. The house is next door to an elementary school. Not really scary, just kinda messed up. Story 2. To the people here who just post Trump, Biden, or the world right now, you're not adding anything to the conversation by virtue signaling on here, it's just corny. Go do that in our politics. Before anyone accuses me of being a maggot or woke police, no I'm not. Story 3. Picture this, a moonless night, a deserted road, and a faint whisper echoing from the darkness. As I ventured closer, the whisper turned into a chilling howl, sending shivers down my spine. Suddenly from the shadows emerged a figure, its eyes gleaming with an otherworldly glow. Frozen in terror, I could only watch as it vanished into the night. Story 4. A few years ago, I was driving late at night through a remote area to visit a friend. Suddenly, my car started making strange noises and eventually broke down. I had no cell service, so I decided to walk to the nearest house for help. After about a mile, I saw an old, abandoned-looking house with a dim light inside. I knocked on the door, and an elderly woman answered. She invited me in, saying I could use her phone. As I dialed for a tow truck, I noticed old photos on the wall. They were of the same woman, but much younger, with a family. When I asked her about them, she looked at me with sad eyes and said, "They're all gone now." I thanked her and left when the tow truck arrived. The next day, my friend told me that the house I described had been abandoned for years after a tragic fire killed the family who lived there. I still can't explain who that woman was. Story 5. I had a very good friend bury another friend alive over a quarter oz of weed. I was with both of them that day. One of them disappeared and was found 15 years later, and somehow the story came out. My friend ended up killing himself in prison. He didn't know the guy was alive when he buried him, supposedly. Story 6. I'll reshare my story about Ruben. Ruben was his name. My wife, girlfriend at the time, and I had to travel to San Antonio for my PRK LASIK surgery. When we arrived in town, we found out our initial hotel plans fell through, and we had to find a last-minute motel to stay at. We get everything situated around noon and get our key for a second-floor room. We load back into our car and drive to the other side of the motel to park our car near our room and start unloading our luggage. Now, if you're not aware of San Antonio, Texas, or any large city, there are a lot of homeless and/or drug users roaming around. As we were unloading our car with our 2 suitcases and a couple of backpacks, my wife and I noticed a disheveled man walking parallel to the motel. He turns towards us and starts approaching us. In our mind, we figured he was just going to ask for cash and go on his way. I mean, the majority of my encounters with homeless and/or drug users are that, but we're still on guard because we don't know this area. After he approached us, he asked if we needed help unloading our stuff. He has a 40 ounces in one hand and another 40 oz halfway out of his cargo pocket. And at this point, I can smell the alcohol coming off of him. We politely tell him no, and that we don't need help as it's only a couple of things. He stumbles to put his already opened 40 oz on the brick ledge next to us, and states he would like to help us, and it's the least he can do. He firmly takes my suitcase out of my hand and starts to introduce himself as Ruben. I'm obviously on guard here. I mean, the man has my suitcase in his hand, and I don't even know him. He starts walking to the stairs, continuing his life story. He seems pretty harmless, but still giving my wife and me those vibes. I explained to him that I don't have cash on hand and that I wouldn't be able to tip him for his generosity. Ruben says that it's fine, and again, this is the least he could do. At this point, he's following my wife and me on the outside balcony to our room. Again, my bells are ringing, and so are my wife's. I restate that I don't have cash. My wife hurries into the room, and I'm with Ruben with my stuff. He hands me my luggage, and I put it in the room right behind the door. I'm starting to close the door, my thigh pressed against it, as well as my wife. As I'm thanking him for his help, he extends his hand out in the form of expecting a payment. I again tell him that we don't have the cash to tip him. In an instant, Rubens's facial expression changed from an "I'm glad to help you" happy face to an "I will hurt you and your wife and won't think twice about it" soulless look. The only form of self-defense I had was my pocket knife, so my hand is on that thinking, I don't know what to even do. It made me think that I didn't have a CCL OCL at this time and I should get one. And at this point I am pushing the door shut, but before I shut it, Ruben utters the phrase, "You better keep your windows and doors locked." I slammed and immediately locked the door and ensured the windows were, in fact, locked. We moved some of the furniture, mostly just the large chair, in front of the door and placed our stuff in front of the windows in a way to barricade them and kept them there for the remainder of our stay when we were in the room. We then notified the front desk of him just in case. Even returning to the room, we would look under the bed and in the bathroom for him in case he broke in. Each time we left the room for my medical appointments, we would always be on the lookout for Ruben, and even to the point of parking in different spots, and take different ways to our room so we wouldn't bump into him again. This all occurred in 2017, and my wife and I still get shivers down our spine simply by the way he just changed so suddenly and uttered those words to us. Hypothetically, if someone would share a San Antonio news report of a man named Ruben killing someone since then, I wouldn't be surprised. Story 7. When I was younger than I am now, I'd seen a video of a woman on YouTube being set on fire with a tire hanging around her neck. Like a man had literally took a lighter to her shirt and watched her burn. It was quite disturbing. She seemed to be in a small crowd of men who were speaking some foreign language as she was rolling around on the ground in pain. Another man had also kept throwing on more lighter fluid to keep the fire alive. I'm assuming she was being punished for some type of crime, because I know citizens in certain countries will take matters into their own hands and punish a criminal themselves. I don't remember every detail, and I think I was so young that I watched it with the volume all the way down, because I was scared of hearing what her screams would sound like. But I do remember how she was rolling around in absolute agony as everyone in the video just cheered it on. I could see the amount of pain she was in even without hearing anything. Story 8. I got 2. They have both kept me up at night. First, the Russian sleep experiment. Classic creepypasta, and I was terrified of it. 5 guys are subjected to a stimulant that forces them to stay awake. Soon they turn into zombie-like madmen. 1 scientist survives. Again, a classic has been adapted and told many times over. And second, here's a real story. Travis the chimpanzee, who attacked a woman, Charla Nash, in February of 2009. I listened to a documentary about it and what happened, and I heard the phone call to 911. It terrified me. Don't get me wrong, I love animals, but I really do hate chimpanzees. And for the record, Charla survived. I truly do hope she's doing well now. Story 9. Not scary in the traditional sense. In my senior year, had a friend named Michael. Michael was super sweet and really well liked, but a straight edge. Turns out Michael was on antipsychotics and antidepressants and never told anyone but a few close people. Without his medication, he would see people on fire burning and screaming for help. Animals would be crying in pain and tortured, and a lot of other fucked up shit you don't want to hear. At a party, he gets his drink spiked with acid because some shithead punk knew he was straight edge and wanted to see him trip for the first time. Michael totally broke down in hysterics, running around frantically trying to put out fires that didn't exist, begging for the screaming to stop, and sobbing, pleading for forgiveness that he could save them. We had to call an ambulance because no one had any idea what to do. Never saw someone trip so bad. Michael was strapped down and wheeled away in hysterics. When he came back, he was nothing but a hollow shell. He went from being charming and funny to someone who didn't speak except when he was mumbling under his breath. He would whip his head around in class in paranoia and had a blank expression on his face at all times. I think we saw smile a few times, but all in all, he would just stare forward. Eventually, he was taken out of school and put in a psych ward because his parents, and honestly all the kids around him, knew he needed help far beyond anything we could have done. Never saw again after he left, and can't find him or his family on social media. Just disappeared. Also, the kid that spiked his drink apparently got jumped, unrelated, and had trauma so bad to his head he permanently lost his vision. Most of us saw it as a fitting punishment. Don't do drugs, kids. Story 10. My hometown has a place called Hell's Gate. It is said that if hell ever comes out, that place would be one of the gates that open. No animal ever goes near there. No plants grow there. A lot of cult activities happen there. We have had some incidents where people went missing when they wanted to explore around there. A group of 4 tourists visited there once. 3 of them disappeared, and the 4th one can't remember what happened or where they were. The story of old says that a demon hides in that area. Anyone who gets to close without tribute will be taken as tribute. Story 11. Robert Benjamin Rhodes, born November 22, 1945, also known as the Truck Stop Killer, is an American serial killer and rapist. He is confirmed to have tortured and killed at least 2 couples in Illinois and Texas in 1989 and 1990, and is additionally suspected of torturing, raping, and killing more than 50 women between 1975 and 1990. based on data about his truck routes and women who went missing during those years and who met the profile of his preferred victims. At the time he was caught, Rhodes claimed to have engaged in these activities for 15 years. This dude gave me and still gives me the chills. Story 12, I got a couple related to Ouija boards. I'm still not a believer in a lot of paranormal things. However, I can't say something does or doesn't exist with certainty, and I certainly can't explain these events. Made a makeshift Ouija board out of a piece of cardboard, used a Sharpie and a shot glass as the planchette. Everyone assumes someone is moving it to be a jokester, but you can feel it when someone isn't. It's strange. I, being the non-believer in the group, keep taunting what or whomever we're speaking with, and before I could finish the question, prove you're real by doing something in this room. It starts spelling out watch, and the second the planchette hits the H, my friend's phone is receiving a call from his girlfriend who is sitting right next to him. Nothing on her screen, though. We answer it, dead silence, and the phone freezes. This is when you just take the battery out and put it back in to reset it. We do that, turn it on, another call from his girlfriend sitting right next to us. Same deal, dead silence and frozen. We freak the hell out at this point and throw away the board. When we turned his and her phones on, no call history back and from either of them was strange. 2. A couple weeks after the above, I would come home to all of the kitchen cupboards open, doors opened, weirdest being the basement and my parents' double doors, one with a latch in the ceiling. I was the last to leave and first to come home on those days, and I really couldn't explain it. That house had a really unsettling energy about it. I'm still not sold on Ouija boards, but I legitimately can't explain some of this shit that happened following the Ouija board experiences, and it always was super fast to respond at that house, but rarely elsewhere. Would have weird sleep paralysis experiences and hear people breathing in my room at night, unmistakably. We moved out a few months later, luckily. But weird shit. I love hearing other people's Ouija board experiences. Edit. Oh, one more that is kind of funny. To convince my friends no one was moving the planchette, I drew a picture of a sheep and told no one, and the board guessed it was a cloud. I drew a really bad-looking, fluffy sheep and was like, damn, that was pretty fucking close. Story 13. Police found a woman in a box, with her limbs amputated. She was being kept as a sex slave. It turns out you can buy such women, and they are being shipped to you in a box. Dragged. Think about it. Someone is willing to capture a living being, mutilate it, and sell it as a sex slave. And that such a market exists. Just imagine the life of such a woman. You can't do anything. You are 100% dependent by your owner. Ask for food. Ask to be carried to the toilet. As for a shower and in between all that, getting raped. Mankind is doomed. Only a comet can save us. Story 14. Unit 731 in Japan around WW2. Led by Shiro Ishii, it was a secretive medical facility where prisoners, mostly Chinese, viewed as subhuman by the Japanese, were tortured to death in insane medical experiments. People were infected with STDs and forced to have sex with other prisoners, as well as being raped by guards, being starved and only given salt water to drink, horse blood and seawater injected into veins, people placed into huge centrifuges and spun until dead. Many people, including children, were dissected alive, without anesthesia. People were put into chambers with increasing pressure until their eyes popped out, forced to have body parts exposed to extremely low temperatures until frozen through, then had them held over fires, put in boiling water, shattered with hammers, etc. People tied to posts to test the damage of grenades, bombs, flamethrowers, and chemical weapons at different distances, leaving infants to die in the snow. Limbs amputated and reattached on the wrong side, removing prisoners' stomachs and attaching the esophagus to the intestines. When the war was coming to an end and the Japanese knew they were in trouble, every subject was killed. To make it better, the U.S. leaders let those in charge walk completely free in exchange for their largely useless research. Story 15. One of the scariest stories I've ever heard is about the black-eyed children. These mysterious beings reportedly appear on doorsteps or in deserted areas, their eyes completely black and void of any emotion or humanity. The encounters are said to be chilling, and have left those who have experienced them in a state of dread and fear. The idea of encountering such otherworldly beings is truly bone-chilling. Story 16. One time my cousin told me about her friend that had a pet snake. Big snake, I think python, I'm not a snake gal. Anyways, she said her friend grew concerned because her snake had stopped eating. She thought it might be dying, so she took said snake to the vet. The vet asked her, "Do you sleep with him in the bed?" Girl said yes. The vet looked at her and said, It's not that he's dying, hence him not eating. No, he's saving room and sizing you up for his next meal. While I don't know if this was altogether true, I've now vowed not to have a pet snake, or at least sleep with one. Story 17. One fine day in the middle of the night, two dead boys began to fight. Back to back they faced each other, pulled out their swords and shot each other. A deaf policeman heard this noise and came and arrested these two dead boys. And if you don't believe this tale at all, ask the blind man, he saw it all. Free admission, pay at the door, pull up a chair and sit on the floor. True story. Story 18. A friend of mine was roommates with John Albert Gardner, who murdered Chelsea King and Amber Dubois. I grew up hearing about those killings and just that fact that he was able to tell me stories about John coming home and sometimes relaxing with housemates, while other times heading straight to his room, seriously freaked me out. My buddy said he was a generally normal roommate, but always felt sort of off. He didn't expect, nor would have guessed, that raped and murdered two girls, and tried to with a third.
Story 19. I have a friend who knew a man who said controversial things in China. According to this guy, a Chinese man turned up at his school and asked about the welfare of his children. Supposedly, this man was linked to the Chinese government in a freaky conspiracy way.
A real freaky thing is my university lecturer, who wrote a paper critical of the U.S. Iranians asked him if they could use this paper in an official capacity. The lecturer declined. At one of his lectures, Iranian officials turned up and asked him in person if this paper could be utilized by Iran. He again refused. His website was subsequently hacked by a group of people linked back to somewhere in Iran. Freaky moral of the story, even though I doubt the validity of the first story. Foreign governments can reach you in your country if they view it as important enough. Story 20. In my country, Mexico, there is a case called Niños Rotos, broken children. Basically, it was a kindergarten that did not have enough space to honor the flag, so they did it on the street outside the school. A guy named Jose Luis Nieto Avila had been complaining for some time that the ceremony was blocking his way to his mechanic's shop, until in an act of desperation, he rams his blue pickup truck into the kids and teachers. 22 people were injured, and two children, Adriana Martinez and Rodrigo Reyes, aged 5 and 3 respectively, lost their lives. The attacker showed no remorse for his actions, only claiming to have acted out of desperation after a prolonged dispute with the kindergarten teaching staff. Story 21. This is a story about my personal life. When I was still in the 3rd grade, I returned home from school at a late hour of the day, or rather around 8 p.m. My school is a 3-minute walk from my house, and in fact it is safe to walk from school to home and back. When I returned home, nothing foreshadowed trouble, but when I started to approach the entrance, I saw some old grandmother with a Doberman or a German Shepherd, something like that. They were hopelessly standing near my entrance. I thought, maybe they don't have the keys. When I decided to ask them, "Do you need to open the door?" They began to stare at me with piercing eyes, right into the depths of my soul. Grandma looked at me very strangely, letting her head go a little. After a moment, they started coming at me. The dog looked very big, and so, when they were almost next to me, walking very slowly and carefully, as if grandmother was going to kill or kidnap me, I realized that something was completely unclean here, and I just started running away from them around the house with all the speed for a 10-year-old girl. For a long time, I did not dare to look into the courtyard towards my entrance, but when I returned, they were no longer there, and they just disappeared to no one knows where. I still don't know who or what it was, but I never saw them again. Story 22. Well, there are countless scary stories out there, but one that often sends shivers down people's spines is the tale of the Hook. The story goes like this. A young couple parks in a secluded area late at night, looking for some privacy. As they're cuddling in the car, they hear a news bulletin on the radio warning about a dangerous criminal who has escaped from a nearby mental institution. The girl gets nervous and wants to leave, but her boyfriend reassures her that they'll be safe. As they continue to relax, they hear a scraping noise outside the car. The girl starts to panic and insists that they should go home, but her boyfriend laughs it off, attributing the sound to branches scraping against the car. Reluctantly, the girl agrees to stay a little longer. Eventually, they hear the scraping noise again, this time louder and more persistent. The girl insists that they leave immediately, and her boyfriend finally relents. As they drive away, they hear a loud thud on the roof of the car. Terrified, they speed off into the night. When they arrive home, they discover a bloody hook hanging from the door handle of the car. The story plays on common fears of being vulnerable in isolated areas and the terror of a lurking, unknown threat. It's the uncertainty and the unexpected twist at the end that make it so chilling. Plus, it's the kind of story that sticks with you long after you've heard it, making you think twice about parking in secluded spots at night. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, like it. Be sure to write comments and share your stories.